Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe, and this week we've got part 2 with Kirsten, which is all about her 100-kilometre adventure with Oscar's Hut to Hut. So if you haven't had a chance to check out part 1, that's just the episode back. You can check that out. And I apologise that it has taken me a little while to get up part 2, but it was over 3 hours of footage, which has just taken me a little while to refine into podcast form. So I hope you enjoy it. Here it is.
I had those sunglasses and everything arrived the other day, on Tuesday it must have been, and I was like, this parcel, I wonder where this is from. I hadn't even remembered ordering it.
I've gotten a few parcels like that over the last week. I'm like, what is this?
That's right.
And I'm like, I ordered those Morton gels, so I've been trying them out.
Are they any good?
They are. The consistency takes a bit of getting used to because it's not because it's water-based. It's
so
more like having jelly than like a gel. And so the first time I was like, I almost feel like I have to eat this rather than, just chuck it down the back of my throat.
Yeah.
But once you're sort of used to that part of it, doesn't sort of like coat your mouth the way a gel does because of the water base. And you don't need to have water with it. So I've had like a long run where I had carbs in water before I started, and then I had 4 of those gels and no stomach upset.
That's awesome.
So pretty good in that respect. I do find them because they're sort of, they're obviously sweet because it's sugar, but they're flavourless.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just sweet.
Cool. So there's it's just
so there's no sort of I'm not
like a
having
lemonade
salted
kind
caramel or coffee green apple or whatever fancy.
Yeah, that seems disappointing though.
But so I could
I'll have
see
apple pie
how in the course of something that's a longer distance, like a marathon, you could get over the sweetness. I could see. Yeah. But that could also just be because I've had a month of very limited sugar and even if I yesterday when I had my workout, if it's something like the work part is sort of 10 to 12 kilometres and I just have one gel in the middle, and it's only if I'm having sort of a longer progression type run that I'll have it will all be fully carbed. So I could possibly just be a bit more sensitised to how sweet it is. But still, I do tend to get a little bit crampy or, with that many gels. So not having any of that is pretty good. They're a bit more expensive than...
I think sometimes though it's worth the money. The spring ones that I've been using they're more expensive and and then you go through, when you're talking 7, 10, 12, whatever hours, you go through so many of them. Yeah. So, but they're worth it because the 32K that I did last year, and I was using those gels, and my stomach was fine the whole way. My stomach wasn't an issue 10 kilometres rather than having an upset stomach, and both marathons it was around the 21K mark that 21 to 24K mark that I had stomach upset. So and that's if it was in the last 5K that'd be fine, but when it's only halfway it's a little bit of you've still got 21K to struggle through. So it was really surprising to not actually have that be an issue for 4 hours, to not have any worries about it. And they've never had any. They've never given me any issues. They are a bit bigger and they're sort of more. It's they're like a bit of pureed food kind of consistency, so they're not for everybody. But I think they're totally worth the money, rather than trying to find a tree to rush and hide behind to empty
and
guts
once
out.
you feel once you have an upset stomach,
It's just so
like
draining.
It's just like it goes downhill very quickly, and you
very
can't
quickly.
you can't bounce back from it. Like
No.
even like because that happened in Melbourne, and you're lucky in Melbourne in that there's loads of toilets, and you don't even have to do portaloos. You can just like go into the public toilets, and they're like right on course. And even after I did that, it was still just a really unpleasant sort of 10
You just
kilometres.
feel all you want to do is just lie down. You don't. The energy, finding the energy to run is just it's near impossible. But it's such a struggle mentally when you feel like that. You just think, is this going to be, and then you start getting wary of sucking down more gels to, is it going to upset your stomach again? And mind you think there's nothing left in there. So
but I didn't mind. Like the Cliff ones I can buy at the supermarket.
Yeah, you can buy them at the supermarket now, which is really convenient.
And I've found them quite good. I mean, definitely, like you kind of need a bit of water with them.
They get a bit tacky in the mouth, don't they?
Yeah. The only thing about the Morton ones that are annoying is I actually find them kind of hard to open.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's just like, this is a really easy thing. Like, how do you fuck this up?
Surely ease of use is pretty high up there on your packaging requirements.
Yeah, and at first I thought, I'm just like tearing it in the wrong way, but yeah, no, it's just a bit hard to get open. So it's just like,
that's annoying. You're pelting along trying to get your PB and you're trying to open a gel. What the fuck?
It's like, nah.
Give me that fucking burrito.
It's
easier to eat that than try and open one of those gels. Oh, funny. That's really hilarious. Yeah. How can you screw that up? Seriously. I've sort of fallen into the whole of being too frightened to use other gels though. Like that's my problem now, is that they're the ones that I like. And then like when we had the drop bag not be at the aid station, and they were like, well, we've got some V-Fuel ones here. And I was like, oh, I don't want to, like, I've still got 7 hours to go. I seriously do not need to get GI issues if I'm pushing cutoffs. Like, I don't want to fuck up. I don't want to fix what's not broken. So, and I don't want to, it was a real reluctance. And they've gone into my gel stash, for just in case anybody wants to try a brand. Got a friend who's, curious to try some fueling strategies for UTA 22 and I said, I've got heaps. You can, I've got about 5 different brands you can try. All these ones that I've tried and not liked or collected at events or gotten for free or whatever and never used. And so I'm going to give her all those. But I was like, I don't really want to use your gels. I took a few just in case, but I thought these are my worst case scenario. I'm stuck and I need fuel and I've got 2 hours to go and it's okay, if I take this now because I'm not far from, reaching my goals sort of thing. But yeah, it was like it's a real kind of I'm not sure how that's going to go with my poor stomach, And after sucking down gels and Clif bars and all manner of rot on, at aid stations, Coke and lollies and shit, you think is it hanging on by a thread? Like seriously, what if I take a gel now, take a goo or whatever now, am I going to, like, your palates, you're on the, you're almost on a knife edge at that point after 24 hours. So,
things can, like, there was this one time where I didn't have any gels or anything in the house and I had, like, a biggish run and I knew I was going to need something. Like, I knew I couldn't just do it with water, and I was like I could sort of, like, do some, put some, like carb powder in water and leave it at the car and kind of loop around. Like, that was an option. I've certainly done that since. But on this day, I was like, it'll be fine. I'll just, like, take one of the kids' muesli bars. It's all carbs. It'll be fine. So it was such a bad idea. Just, you know, like you just don't sort of
Yeah.
think about the consistency of like, because it wasn't like, if it had been one of those things like the one that I did yesterday, I had like 2.5 minutes of just standing there in between reps, and so that's a very
Yeah, you could
pleasant
have eaten a
time to have
muesli bar
something
there.
to eat.
Yeah.
But when you are kind of like, must have been jogging recoveries or something like that, and it's just like practically choking. It's so dry. It's just like, it was bad, but it was also necessary. Like even like after I'd had like the first half or whatever, it's like, still need carbs. I know
still
this
need to
sucks,
eat.
but I've just got to, you know, like push through here.
Yeah, no, terrible.
never
The things we do, but it's a good lesson though. Like I remember the first trail run I did, and I was interested in those. I think they were little ball things, and they were more like a whole foodie kind of thing, and they were these energy balls or something. I don't remember what they were called. And I had been tempted to buy some, and they had them for sale at the event that I was doing, and I was really curious about them, but they were only selling them by the box.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want 50 of them if they taste like shit, and they wouldn't let me taste one. And so one of the aid stations, I think one of the last aid stations we came across had them, and so I took one. And they were little things covered in coconut and whatever. And I took a bite, I spat it out, and I threw it in the bushes. And
also, like,
I was like, it was
covering
the wrong
makes sense, but not like for fueling, because like all of that, it's you know, like you probably don't have water to. Like,
I haven't got enough saliva in my mouth to process that. Oh, it was. Oh, so that was shit. I'd rather eat half a banana. You know, it was just totally the wrong texture, totally the wrong consistency, and everything else. It was just horrible. And I just, I was so glad that I got to try it in a run situation before I forked out $20 for a box of this stuff, because that would have been great as a snack to have in your handbag, or, you know, as you're out shopping, or you throw them to the kids in the car or something like that. But as a run snack, no, not for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's so much, you know, like I see relatively often like people ask for, not just in our groups, but in other groups, like recipes for like protein balls.
Oh, yeah.
And you looking at the ingredients that like people have, and I'm like, that's a carb ball. That's a carb ball,
not a protein ball,
a shit ton of fat in it, which is fine and yummy and great for if you need like something to kind of like when you are like getting the kids out the door and you're like a couple of energy balls, like a swig of coffee, off you go. So what were we up to? Day 2, just when you thought it was going to get better and it got worse.
There you are. I've just turned my speaker on my phone. No, I can hear you properly. So day 2, just when I thought things were going to get a little, I don't know what we thought. It was just, I think we thought that day 2 was going to be easier than day 1.
Like longer, but not as technical.
Longer, but not as technical, or not as
much like you could be in a free solo documentary.
Yeah. We thought, I think because the first day it was, we had a huge decline, like we had a huge downhill, we had a huge uphill. So we had about, if there was a total of nearly 6,000 metres elevation gain over the 100 kilometres. Day 1 was just under 40k, and it had 2.5k of that elevation and gain and loss in that first day. So we thought, kilometre-wise, you know, metres of elevation per kilometre.
Yeah.
Day 2 was going to be a little bit more forgiving.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have been more wrong. I think it was just, you know, we set off. I think the one of the first challenges that we faced was that neither of us really knew how we were going to pull up after day 1. So getting up and, you know, having a less than ideal night's sleep, getting up trying to get our gear organised in the dark, having to have all our gear packed away and squared away before we left, and even things like queuing up for the toilet to go to the bathroom before we left, and there was a girl standing in line eating her breakfast while she was waiting for the loo, and I said, "Oh, why didn't I think to do that?" And she goes, "Oh, it's all right. This is where we lost time last year, so this year I'm multitasking." And it's like, why didn't I? Until you're there, it never crosses your mind to think that there's going to be 20 people waiting for one toilet. I need to drink my cup of tea or my coffee or eat my breakfast, while I'm waiting in line. So, luckily breakfast was a non-event, but it was a clip bar while packing up camp. But it was sort of a lesson in itself of what our bodies were going to feel like after a day of 2.5K of elevation and gain, loss and gain, and 40K, 12 hours of effort and all this sort of stuff, and sleeping in less than ideal comfort. It wasn't exactly 5-star accommodation. I wouldn't even call it glamping. It was very rough and ready, and we had taken the bare minimum for personal comfort sort of thing in our drop bags. So we managed to set off and took a few kilometres of just getting moving to warm things up a little bit and loosen things up. And it was pretty lucky that the first sort of 2.5K were just on fire trail. There was some uphills and things, but it just sort of woke the body up reasonably gently, I guess, compared to what it could have been like. Yeah. So it was, and then we turned off. You turned off onto the Australian Alpine walking track, the AAWT, which is not an easy abbreviation to get your mouth around. And we spent the next 20 kilometres on there. So the AAWT included Gantner's Hut, included the Crosscut Saw, and included, I think probably about 5 other smaller peaks that we just basically followed ridge lines along. And I think at one point we were rejoicing very early on in the day, even before the sun had come up, that we were pretty impressed with ourselves because we'd covered 7 kilometres in 2 hours, and how awesome were we? We were making such great time, and it just changes. It changed our perspective on everything. But it was sort of there was a nice bit of running. There was a nice bit of trails there that would have been a lovely run had we been carrying 3 or 4 kilos less.
Yes.
But I think we'd sort of been a little bit scarred by the day before, a little bit traumatised by our rock climbing efforts the day before, and we'd heard that the Crosscut Saw was coming up, and we'd heard that it was long, like what we had, a little bit like what we'd done the day before, but longer. And it was sort of, we had, I think Ness and I were busy in our own brains trying to imagine what it was going to be like, trying to get our heads around it, and scaring the absolute pants off ourselves in the process, because I literally had visions of me hugging rocks, making my way along ridge lines, cliff kind of, and I was terrified. And it was, and we were coming up on this, following this trail along, and all of us, and the sun was starting to come up, and it was beautiful, and there was the sunrise coming through the clouds, and it's silhouetted this mountain, and I could see people. You could see the little silhouette, these little sort of legs climbing up the silhouettes going up the side of this thing, and I nearly had a panic attack. I thought, shit, this is it. This is it. What am I going to do? I don't know, I just, who's around me, sort of. I started to sort of go through in my head, well, it's okay, this is here. I've just got to, right, we can do this together. I've just got to keep breathing. Right, there's people up there. They're walking. They're okay. Who's behind us? There's no one pushing fast behind us or anything like that. And it was very much a matter of just take some deep breaths. You can do this, sort of trying to talk myself through it. And it turns out it was just a steep ridge line. It was, it was, but it just meant that I spent, until we actually sort of got to the crosscut saw and found out what we were dealing with, I spent the whole morning on high alert.
Yeah.
And it was exhausting. Every time, is it just around here? And I had, read the maps and all this sort of stuff, but I had, in my fatigue, I couldn't remember at what distance in the crosscut saw would start. And we had a great morning. We sort of, I think we'd come to the point where we had pretty much given up on trying to run, run bits or anything like that. We were both pretty tired. We were both pretty sore. Our feet were, sore. Our toenails were sore. We both were pretty fatigued. So it was, and there were some people ahead of who overtook us and started running. And you know what? They never actually made up that much ground.
Yeah.
In front of us. So we were sort of like, what's the point? Literally, what is the point? We're going to be out here all day running for the next 500 metres. Is it worthwhile? No, not in our.
And for the most part, even if probably not for in one of the trail runs that I did with with more elevation. Yeah, probably not so much for the people who are winning, but for people who are kind of in the middle or mid to back, the hikers were far more efficient than the runners. And so I had one where, and so I was kind of running where I could and then, walking uphill, that kind of thing. And the people who hiked the whole way finished before I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're conserving energy, it's more of a, it's that consistent effort, that consistent pace, and rather than having a sprint and then having to walk and then having a sprint and then having to walk kind of thing. It was just how much more effort do we use up trying to run versus let's just maintain an efficient hike that conserves energy because we've got 63 kilometres to cover today. It's and we've got 3.5 of elevation gain and loss to deal with. We just plus we're carrying the fatigue of 40 kilometres the day before, so and not nearly enough sleep over over at least 2 nights. So it was sort of there was we had sort of just seemed to have come to the natural decision that we would do our best. We would always be pushing. We certainly weren't dawdling. Excuse me, but running was counterproductive and counterintuitive at that point. So it was I'm just trying to remember the I know we got to Gantner's Hut at one point, and that was about halfway along the section that we were doing of the WT. So it was about 11 kilometres into the morning, and we probably got there, I don't know, maybe around 9:30 in the morning, I think. And it was a beautiful hut, really gorgeous triangular hut with one of those, the roof that comes all the way down to the grass kind of thing, real alpine kind of looking, European alpine looking hut. And it had this fancy toilet. It was the flash loo with the really awesome view, and it was almost a obligation to go out to the toilet and take a photo because it was this beautiful, massive big drop blue toilet with a roof and doors and glass. This one glass wall that was that looked out onto the valley below it, and it was really spectacular. So you could sort of sit and have a minute and do what you had to do. But at the same time admiring the fact that you're in a really, really beautiful part of the country. And yeah, so we actually made really good time to get there, we thought. And then I was faffing around a little bit, and Ness called me out and she said, come on, there's nothing else you can do here. You've got to get going. You're just wasting time. You're procrastinating. So yeah, it was sort of, it was, I was terrified. I was really scared about what was, obviously we got that far and there was no crosscut saw, and there was just this thing hanging over my head. And we actually happened to start talking to some people on the way out from Gantner's Hut out towards the crosscut saw, and it turns out that they are actually coached by the same coach that I am, by Aaron. And so we took a photo, and we had, once I figured out who they were, we took a photo and had a laugh and got to know these people a little bit better. And we actually, they were really lovely to us later on in the afternoon when we found out that our drop bag hadn't stayed at the aid station where it was meant to that afternoon. But I think once it was just more of the same. I think it was a gentler day insofar as there was no huge climbs and no huge descents, but it was just relentless ridgeline climbing. There was minimal flat ground anywhere. And, the crosscut saw, we just felt like we were up there for hours and hours and hours. It was just, it was sort of quite steep ridge lines, and it was quite rocky, and it was quite technical. And, I'm sure people who are much, much better trail runners than I am would run along there with relative ease, but it was a massive challenge for both Ness and I. And it took us 3 hours to do to do 7 kilometres along there. There was rock climbing. There was times when it was all we could do between the two of us. We were both in the same space, I think, where we were just focusing on that square metre of ground in front of us. Because if we looked elsewhere, the legs would start shaking. You'd get a bit of vertigo because of how high you were, and things like that. And I think not necessarily having a lot of comfort with heights.
Yeah, I'm not. I remember at the Blue Mountains, I wasn't running, but I went to the lookout, and I was deeply, and that's all fenced. Like there's nowhere, like you're not going to fall. And I was deeply uncomfortable there.
It is really, and it was really unsettling to feel that if you stood up, that you felt like you were going to fall down the hill. You having that extra weight on your back, and already very fatigued legs, fatigued core and all that sort of thing, that it was just, it felt really precarious at times. I'm sure it wasn't and isn't to many people, but for a couple of people who are not comfortable with heights at all, it was really, really challenging. And there was, on the first day, somebody had fallen and hurt themselves on the crosscut saw and had to be chopped out with a broken leg, fractured ribs, and a punctured lung. So it was no picnic, that's for sure. We got. We happened to come across people at the right time to sort of help us over some big rocks, and where the rope where the rope was to help us clamber over these rocks, and it was, and we sort of got to those things. And I think, given the experience beforehand, the experience the day before when we were going up the rocks at the bluff, and I'd been either very close to tears or actually in tears at what what we were having to do to move forward. And I remember thinking to myself, no, today I'm going to be, I did that yesterday, so today I'm a stronger person, and I can manage, I can cope with what challenges I get faced with today, because I dealt with yesterday. And today I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be the strong one. I'm going to make sure that Ness and I are okay. I was like, I'm not going to, yesterday was, Ness sort of carried us through, and that was fabulous. And I thought, no, today I'm gonna be made of stern stuff, and I'm gonna face this head on. And it was like, who's going first? And I was sort of threw myself in there, thinking to myself, A, I want to get it out of the way as quickly as possible, and B, I don't want to be the last one through. having watched other people do it, the anticipation is so much worse than the actual doing of it, that I didn't want to be watching other people doing it and wondering how I was going to manage to get through it myself. So, but there was, we were scrambling down rocks on our backsides. We were climbing up, wedges in rocks that were 3 or 4 meters high. And it was just this constant technical terrain that just seemed to never end. There was a lot of swearing. There was chest high tea tree that we were going through, and you couldn't see the track in front of you, and you're just thinking to yourself, please don't stand on a snake, please don't let there be any snakes. It was every step was like a lesson in trust, and just this leap of faith. There was nothing hiding under there that was out to cause me harm. And we'd see people in the distance heading over, continuing on the ridgeline, hundreds of meters in the distance, and we're just like, we've got to go up there. We've got to go up there, Ness. Like, seriously, there was lots of, no, we don't. Yes, we do. Oh, shit, yes, we do. Please tell me the trail doesn't go that way. Yeah, it goes that way. Okay. So it was just the monotony of what we were doing for hours on end. It was so exhausting, just so exhausting, and it was really wearing on your your state of mind and your positivity. And it's like, this is not fun. This is not fun. But I literally have no choice. I can't go back, because that's 20K in the wrong direction. I literally can't go back, because I'm not going back. I don't want to have to do that again. Like, I can't. The only choice is to continue on. And it was really, and that was really tough. And also knowing that there was, still more, challenges to come. You sort of, but it very much, I guess it was a real lesson in mindfulness and being present in what you're doing, because you just, you couldn't afford to be distracted by stuff. Every time you get distracted, you trip over, you'd fall over, you'd misstep, you'd lose your balance or whatever. So it was, there was trying to stay focused. That focused for hours and hours on end was just incredibly fatiguing. And also trying to keep your mind on the fact that we were looking out for each other. Have you eaten? How's your stomach feeling? Ness had started the day with a less than ideal stomach. She wasn't very hungry. She was feeling a little unsettled. So she was being really cautious with food, but I was, just trying to make sure that she was staying, that she was keeping up with taking on nutrition, and that she was drinking enough, and monitoring how much I was drinking. And, she was checking in with me. We'd be like, oh, have you eaten lately? Do you need to eat more? It's, let's stop for, let's get a gel out, or, whatever. There was a lot of faffing around on that section, because it was poles away, because it was so technical, and you needed both hands to grab hold of rocks to lower yourself down or lift yourself up. So there was, putting poles away, there was getting poles out, there was, trying to, just replacing water bottles and things, because, you'd have the 2 on the front of your pack, and then you'd empty one of those, so you'd replace it with a fresh one, but that was stored in the back of your pack, and, all this sort of stuff. So there was a lot of
Logistics.
Yeah, it was just, personal organisational nightmare kind of thing. But but we weren't moving fast anyway, so it wasn't. I didn't feel like that held us up at all. The thing that held us up was the fact that it was just incredibly technical terrain. And looking at other people's Strava segments, we weren't the only ones who took that long up there. So it was, it was not certainly not an anomaly for us to be taking 3 hours to cover this 7K. It was incredibly difficult. But and then there was somebody got married up there, so we sort of had come along this crosscut saw, which is basically this beautiful ridge line that and series of mountains. There was one called Mount Buggery, and then next one on is called Mount Speculation. And at the top of Mount Speculation, this couple who participated in the event, they got married. And they were fast enough hikers and runners. They were competing separately. They were one girl was with her friends, and the bride was with her two friends, and the groom was competing as a solo runner. So they were fast enough to have gotten to Mount Speculation. She put her makeup on and her veil, and she had a bouquet and everything, and she met some of her family members at the top, and they had a celebrant and everything. And then so they stopped. They were exchanging their vows when we passed them. We didn't stop. Sorry, I'd love to stay. There was an open invitation for anybody to stop and attend. That was, fine. But then we didn't stop. But then later on, a few hours, probably 3 or 4 hours later, they overtook us. The bride and her two friends overtook us later on. They were hiking, but they were hiking so fast. It was,
That's one way to cut down on your invite list, isn't it? To be on top of a mountain. If you can't get up here, we'll see when we get down.
That's right. How to stop all the people you don't want to be at your wedding attending. But it was really lovely, and one of the event photographers was up there, and he took some beautiful photos of the bride and groom and their little ceremony, and it was beautiful weather for it. It was just gorgeous. And then we had we came across the Mount Speculation car park was the next aid station after that, and there was these we spent only enough time at the aid stations to actually do what was necessary. All the volunteers were amazing, and they'd fill up water bottles and they'd make you a sandwich and all this sort of stuff and get you anything that you needed. But there'd be people there having sit downs on rocks and shoes off and tending to feet and packs off and all this sort of stuff, and like they had the day before at various aid stations. And we sort of thought, well, that's just we might be slower in the moving part of it, so let's not waste too much time unnecessarily at aid stations. Let's be efficient. Let's do what we need to do, but let's not linger.
I'd be a bit concerned about, once you sit down and take your shoes off, it's hard work to get it back, get yourself back upright.
Absolutely. Like it was, every minute that you stay there, it's harder to leave. I think, it's and we would spend, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes there, but then we just push on. Have a Coke, grab some lollies, get our water bottles refilled, have a sandwich if there was a sandwich on offer, and go and eat while we were walking. I guess what we were lacking in speed, we felt we had to make up for in being efficient and just moving, as much as possible. And we come across, we left there, and there was a stretch of fire road that we were hiking along, and that was probably one of the most runnable sections of the course. But you're also 60 kilometres in to the whole thing by this stage and pretty tired. And the pack's starting to, leave marks on your shoulders, and it's starting to be really quite fatigued. You're feeling more and more fatigued, obviously, the more you go on. But I saw a snake at that point, I think, and my natural reaction was to sprint in the opposite direction of the snake towards Ness. So it was quite refreshing to actually move the legs in a different way.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger, and to realise that I was 60 odd kilometres into it, and I could still get a decent pace up for a few. The snake wasn't too impressed. I don't know what sort of snake it was, but it was. I don't think there's very many sorts of snakes that live in the alpine region because the temperatures are not, during winter it's so cold up there. I don't know, but we were overtaking people hiking up. There were some people who looked really hard done by, sort of between 60 and 65 k's into it. So we were sort of we were just we were pushing as fast as we could, hiking as fast as we could, sort of thing, while we could, and and then we had one more little obstacle to overcome before we got to the King Valley Hut, which was the aid station at 73 kilometres or 70, whatever it was, 73 kilometres in, and it was called this thing called Muesli Spur. And the Muesli Spur is this 1.6 kilometre long descent which drops 400 or 500 metres in elevation over a mile, and it was incredibly steep. And it was, thank goodness it wasn't muddy and wet, because it would have been, with any more than a few mil of rain, and it would have been a river. It was just, it was quite funny. We had to have a chuckle that some blokes had come up behind us at the beginning of Muesli Spur, and we sort of said, do you want to go past? And they said, no, we're good here. Old mate's got a gammy knee. And I said, well, we're pretty slow, so you guys go in front, and you can just, clear away a few of the rocks for us on your way past. And we never saw them again. We never caught up to old mate with his sticky neck. So it was. We had a chuckle about that later on. I think they may have camped the night at King Valley Hut, but we certainly never saw them on the descent after they overtook us. So we were. I think it's highlighted that descents are certainly an area that I need to work on, the really technical descents. But we were on our hands and bums going down this, this hill at times, the spur. You'd put your hands down and you'd get a handful of prickles. You had prickles all through your pants. I felt sorry for the people who were wearing shorts, because they would have ended up with a whole bucket load of dirt in there. It was just. It was sliding. It was just so slippery and loose sort of dirt that it was, we certainly weren't the only ones going down on our backsides. Lots of people had meltdowns going down that hill. It was really full on. And it took us, I think, for the 1.6K, it probably took us almost an hour to get down there, better part 45 minutes to an hour to get down there. It was just so technical. At one point, these young guys came up behind us, they come and overtaken us, and we were chatting to them for a few minutes, and it was his first trail run ever.
It's a doozy to pick.
Yeah. So he'd run a few half marathons, I think the story was, on road, and this was his first trail run. I said, I thought I was stupid doing it as my first 100K, but at that point I realised that I was probably not quite as crazy as some of the people out there. But that was funny. And there were blackberries. We stopped and ate some blackberries. We were sliding down the hill on our asses, and And we're like, oh, hey, there's blackberries. Oh, let's try one. And they were the most beautiful, refreshing, just the, palate cleansing. Oh, they were lovely. It was just this tiny little glimmer of, I don't know, it was like a patch of light in an otherwise very dark time, that there were these beautiful wild fresh raspberries, blackberries growing on the rock, going down. But yeah, it was just so hard. And I think there was many, many times when both Ness and I are like, bugger this is, we want out. We weren't enjoying ourselves before. We are not enjoying ourselves now. But once it passed, it was okay. But it's just, I guess it's just such a huge lesson in managing your anxiety and managing your stress, and thinking to yourself, well, I don't have much choice. Like it's, it's so many parallels for parenting. When you've come across struggles with your kids, and it's like, this is just too hard, I can't do this. And then you think to yourself, I actually don't have a choice. I'm going to have to try and think clearly and try and come up with a plan, and I just don't have a choice. I have to push through, and I have to find a way to find a solution, a way forward for me and my kids. And it was just, there was lots of struggles like that throughout it, but Meredith had a support crew, and their support crew had come to them because they which is what we had expected to be able to do. That all of a sudden the goalposts had changed, and we were looking at some serious cut-offs. And so we sort of came into the aid station, and we were still talking about pushing through and, seeing how far we could get that night. And then I remember taking Nessa's water bottles, taking her flasks off her, and she went to go and find our drop bag, because we were both fantasising about soda water at this stage. We wanted something. She puts a couple of cans of soda water in our drop bag, and we were fantasising about clean socks and soda water and lolly snakes or red frogs or something. Who knows? I don't know. Something was in there that we were after. And she'd come back to the water station where I was getting all our water bottles filled, and she said, it's gone. The drop bag's been taken away. It left half an hour ago on the back of a 4-wheel drive. And so we had no gels to replenish. We had no electrolytes to replenish. We had no soda water. We had no what else did we have? No warm clothes. No, like our fleeces had been taken in the bags. We'd had any comfort items that we'd had in that bag. If we'd stayed the night, we were sleeping in the clothes that we were wearing. We had no changes of underpants or, sports bras or socks or anything other than what we were carrying in our packs. So, and then at that point, I think we saw Ness had seen Sorrel and Tina, these other two ladies that we'd been talking to at the campsite the night before. And she knew them from previous events. I think she maybe 6 Foot Track, or she knew Tina from 6 Foot Track or something like that. Anyway, they wanted to know if we were pushing on to the finish line with this new news that if we didn't make it, that we would get a DNF. And I think instead of having the drop bag push us over in the we can't continue, to the we can't continue side of things, it pushed me towards the, well, I'm not fucking staying here side of things. Like it was, instead of being a demotivator, it was well, that's it. I'm not stopping. I'm not staying. What's the point? Yeah. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be smelly. What's the point? I'm going to be pissed off tomorrow. I'm going to be miserable because, because I haven't got my drop bag, I haven't got my coffee, I haven't got, all these things that I don't have with me. Instead of being this thing that shut me down, it was a thing that lit the fire to push me to keep going. And Ness and I had a super quick powwow that lasted about 20 seconds, which went along the lines of, are we staying or are we going? And my exact words were, not fucking staying here. And that was the extent of it. We'd been hoarding, I've been shoving watermelon into my face and drinking Coke and all this stuff while they're filling up water bottles, and we're having this little, we literally spent 17 minutes at that aid station. We walked in there at 13 minutes past 4 and we left at 4:30. And in that time, we hooked up with Tina and Sorrel. They said, are you going? And we said, yep. We said, right, we're coming with you. And we had 7.5 hours to do 30 kilometres. And we literally had no idea if we were going to make it. It was
that does seem pretty tight.
Considering that we were doing 7 kilometres in 2 hours on relatively flat, like relatively non-technical, and that we were hiking, and there was still a fair bit of climbing to go. But we knew that the aid station people had said that tomorrow morning everybody had to be gone by 5, like people would be released at 5 a.m. and everybody had to leave at 5 a.m. There was no, you could leave at 6 or, everybody was you had to be ready for 5 a.m. to be released from the campsite. And you had 7 hours to do the 30 kilometres. So she said, actually, you've got an extra half hour tonight.
Yeah.
If you do it tonight, you've got extra time. And it was just a very quick, sort of evaluation in our minds, I think, of how do we get up and do this again tomorrow? How do we take 2 days cumulative fatigue and do 30K in 7 hours tomorrow, which felt like a tighter cut-off than what we were faced with that afternoon, I guess. So, and there was very much a, we are not doing this again tomorrow morning vibe coming from both Ness and I. It was just, no. And so these lovely people, Seth and Mez, had come over and they said, are you staying or are you going? Because they'd been going to push on as well. And then I think having their support crew there, and Mez had also she had a bit of a knee problem as well, so they decided to rest. And we've just turned around and said, well, we're going, but none of our gear's here, so we've got nothing. And next thing you know, they've offered us food and water and sandwiches and soda water and all this sort of stuff, and they've just, anything, people just trying to throw food at us to try and help us to restock, which was just so lovely. And we have left the aid station at a run after 15 minutes in the aid station, from finding out that our gear wasn't there to running out of there, and I'm still trying to put bananas in my pack and apples in my pack, and I ended up ditching the banana at a later aid station, and I think the apple never got eaten, but I was like, I was like doomsday prepping. It was going to come. I've still got 7 hours and I'm hungry. Like, I was really hungry by then. You're in calorie deficit from the day before, so you're just digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole. There's literally not enough food that you could eat and stomach, more to the point, to fill that, to even try and fill that hole. And I just thought, I'm not even going to get any dinner tonight. Like, I'm going to be eating muesli bars for the rest of the goddamn day. I need some food. Like, I felt like I needed something crunchy. And so we've run out of there. Everyone's clapping for us and cheering for us. Like, go girls! There's 4 of us, and I'm like, shit, I hope they're not going to make me run. Thinking I can't run very, yeah, and because I didn't know Tina and Sorrel other than from the hour and a half that we'd spent talking to them the night before, and they were, they're ultra running veteran kind of, they're a lot more experienced at this taper than I am, and I'm thinking, far out, I'm not going to make me run very far. And then about, 100 metres out of camp, we stop because there's a river. We have to cross this river. And I'm still trying to stuff my phone into a plastic bag, and I've got lollies in my pocket, and I'm like, my lollies are going to get wet, and my phone's going to get wet. And somebody told us that the river was waist high, and we're walking through this river that's barely up to, mid-calf. Who did they put through this river as a height gauge? A 5-year-old, it was just comical almost. And I'm like waving around, I've got my poles under my arm, and I've got a half-eaten Vegemite sandwich in my hand, and soda water, and all this sort of stuff. And I must have looked like literally like the picnic on the run, because I felt stupid. It felt really comical at the time, and quite disbelieving, like this, what we were doing. It seemed really surreal. And of course we've crossed the river and we've gone straight uphill. So I had made plans in my head that I was going to cross that river, and I was going to sit down and I was going to change my socks. I had dry socks in my pack for this river crossing that I knew was going to happen. And I was worried I was going to end up with a blister, so I was going, no, I'm going to dry my feet, and of course none of that. Straight out of the river, straight up 3 kilometres of hill, of this disused, now closed 4-drive track. So it was super steep, and it was just a matter of head down, bum up, and Tina and Sorrel were in front of us. They were leading, and I was just, all I could think of in my head was just stay on her heels, just stay. I just tucked myself right in behind Sorrel, she's half a foot taller than me, and she's got legs that climb real fast, and I was like, I'm not going to lose sight of her heels, her feet out of my vision. And Ness was behind me, and I could tell she was struggling a little bit, and I kept just turning around. I didn't have the breath to talk to her, I was just, check, she's still there, check, she's still there. If I wasn't, there was just, and she said later on that she was behind, and she was just thinking, we've made the wrong decision. What are we doing? We need to turn around and go back. We're never going to make this kind of thing. I think perhaps she was in a bit of a hole at that point, and she did an incredible job to push through. And we between the 4 of us, we made a much stronger team than what we had been as 2 separate teams of 2. And we got up that hill. We did that 3-kilometre climb in 45 minutes, which was incredible, just dripping with sweat and blowing like steam trains. And there was no talking. There was just, there was every now and again there was check-ins. Everyone all right? Everyone all right? Like there was no food. There was no, like I'd sip on water and whatnot to, because you're just breathing so heavily. But it wasn't until we got to the top of that 3K climb that we sort of were able to stop and say, hang on, I never got to go to the toilet at that aid station. I'm just going to duck into the, need a wee stop. And it was just, and have something to eat. We shared a bag of lollies and refueled and everything, and I don't think the only time anybody stopped walking was to drop their dacks in the bushes and go for a wee or something. It was just push. And it just seemed, everything just seemed to take so long, I think, at that point. When you're racing against the clock, you feel like you're going nowhere. You feel like you walking in mud, we couldn't move fast enough. And we had, each of us sort of had different strengths. Like Ness and Tina were really quick on the downhills, and Sorel and I were pushing harder on the uphills. And so we'd sort of able to, they were setting the pace on the downhills, and Sorel and I were sort of setting the pace on the uphills. And it was, rather than moving at the pace of the slowest person, it was trying to work in the opposite of the people who at the back need to maintain X amount of pace, because otherwise we're not going to make it.
Yeah.
It was, and everybody, all the aid station volunteers were fantastic. They were all like, "You've got this. You just maintain this pace. You've got this." And but at the same time, 2 hours in, you've still got 5 hours to go from this. We've chipped off maybe 8 or 9K of this 30 kilometres, and so. It was exhausting enough maintaining that pace for 2 hours, let alone to think I've got to maintain this pace for another 5. It was really tough, and it was fire road stuff, predominantly fire road for a lot of that 30K, so it was quite steep. The fall drives, usually the trails, the foot trails sort of wind a little bit, and they might sometimes take an easier route with a little bit less elevation loss or per kilometre or whatever, but the fire trails just bomb straight down and they climb straight up, and it's unforgiving. And Tina at one point just came over real grey, and she really just bottomed out. She really hit the wall, and we sort of we were trying to help her along, and then that was coming up to the second to last aid station, I think, and the volunteers there were amazing, and she sculled half a cup of Coke and she let out the most enormous burp, and it was just this. I think she came good in about 3 minutes. She decompressed her stomach and got a sugar hit and a bit of caffeine, and it was just, but she was on the verge of, she was crying at one point. We were saying, "Give us your pack, we'll take it in turns and carry it for 5 minutes each to lighten your load so you can just regroup." And she was clutching it to her chest and, "No, don't take it," sort of thing. She was just, I think she felt at that point that she was not going to finish, and she was going to go down fighting, but it was, at one point I put myself behind her because I thought, if she falls backwards, I'm going to catch her. I'm not going to let her fall. I just thought I'm going to be just right, and I put myself right behind her to think that if I saw her slip or if she started to topple backwards, that I would just, I don't know, force her forwards or something. I'm not quite sure what I thought I was going to do, but it was all I could think of to try and, help her up this hill. But it was crazy. That last push was just constant for 7 hours. We stopped minimal time at the aid stations that were there. It was refill water, have a cup of Coke, and then I think the longest we spent was at one where we got our head torches out of our packs, knowing that it was easier to do it, an hour before sunset.
Yeah.
Get our merino layer out in case it got cold before the sun went down. And not that we ever needed to put that merino layer on because it never cooled down. We were incredibly lucky. It was just, it never got cold. The sun went down and I'm expecting it, I'm like, once the sun goes down, it's going to get really cold. It's going to get really cold. And we're in T-shirts and, not even, we weren't moving at a speed that was fast enough to create much body heat. But, we were just incredibly lucky with the weather. There was no breeze and there was no, it considering it had snowed up there earlier in the week, we were just so fortunate. And I think like the highlight of that evening, apart from spending it with, as a group of 4, was when the sun set. And we've come up the crest of Mount Sterling, and you could see Mount Buller in the distance. And I posted a photo of it the other day that one of the course photographers had taken, and because there was Mount Buller in the long distance, and Mount Buller's got quite a the top of it's quite rounded, and because of the cairn on it, if you're close enough, it kind of looks like a breast with a nipple. It was, and then sun set. The sun came through the clouds. There was a whole bunch of clouds over the mountain, and there was a break in the clouds, and the sunset was just like a spotlight on the summit of Mount Buller, and it just lit up. It lit up this the silhouette like it was a beacon. It was just, and we could see how far it was. It was so close. It was the closest it had been since 10 o'clock the day before in the morning, sort of thing. And because the route was circular, you could always sort of just, if you were up high enough, you could look and see in the distance, well, that's where we started. This is where we went down here and we come around there, and that's where we've got to go tomorrow, kind of thing. But to be able to see it and to have it maybe 15 kilometres away, and to see it in the distance and just lit up so beautifully by the sunset, it was so spectacular. And this photographer took a picture of us taking a selfie with the mountain in the background, and then we sort of did poles up and all this sort of stuff, and he took a beautiful photo, and it's got Mount Buller in the background, and I think it was just another thing that helped light a fire in our bellies and just make us push even harder. And then I think I sent up a little prayer at one stage of thanks to the mountain bikers out there, because we spent about, I don't know, distance doesn't really mean anything because it was dark, but we spent probably 2 hours on following a mountain bike trail, and they're so beautifully groomed and so beautifully kept. It was just, and given that it was dark and, we were relying on our head torches and things like that, and we were so fatigued, and, our feet were so sore, our toes were so sore that we'd kick a rock and it would just about bring tears to your eyes, and, you'd trip so easily that it was like a godsend that the trails were just so beautifully groomed and so beautifully taken care of that the trip hazards were minimal, and we'd spent the better part of 2 days climbing over fallen trees, and I kid you not, hundreds of fallen trees that we had to climb over of various size and height and everything else. And it was just so lovely just to focus on walking as fast as we could, that we didn't have to worry about, oh God, there's another tree here that we have to climb over. And it was, it was just, and then when you came up, and there was a point where we came to an intersection, and to go right, you could see we were going right past the village, the ski village at Mount Buller, and we knew that we were nowhere near the finish line yet, and that we had to still summit Mount Buller. And it was just this incredible tease to so close.
Pretty horrifying.
It was horrible. It was torturous. And it's like, well, you could go up this tiny little hill right here, where you can see the lights almost, and you can hear the cheering and, hear the finish line. But actually you've got to go 5K that way, up another hill, and up another hill, and up another hill. So basically, we went within spitting distance of the finish line, but then we had to actually follow this trail around to get to the summit of Mount Buller, and we had to summit Buller again. And it was, I think by that stage, it was actually easier to walk uphill than it was to walk downhill. muscle fatigue, and our quads were so sore, and our hips were so sore, our ITBs were so cranky, and but we got to the top of Buller, and there's these sort of stone steps that go up to the cairn at the top, and we had to get a page out of a book, and the page of the book was called what was it called? Panic Room or something. So you had to get the page out of the, you had to rip a page out of the book that corresponded with your bib number, sort of Barclays-esque kind
Very
of
Barclays-esque
sadistic stuff, and it was windy at the top, of course, because it's a mountain, so it was windy at the top of the mountain. And I sat down to get the book and find the pages and tear them out and give them to people, and it was because I was worried I was going to drop something if I stood up to do it, and I nearly couldn't stand up again. And I had to, it took me a good sort of 30 seconds, a minute sort of thing, to be able to actually get up from this sort of semi-crouched position and actually stand up and start moving again. And then we had to walk downhill to the finish line, and it was just, we knew that, and it was still 2.5 k's to the finish line from the summit. And we were just exhausted by that stage. It was just, I was terrified I was going to fall off one of these stairs at the top of the hill, at the top of Mount Buller. I'd have hiked 99 kilometres to fall and break something 2.5 k from the finish line. It's just, you're just so fatigued, it's so tired, it's dark, it's, you're in a hurry to finish and all this sort of stuff, but it was sort of a lesson in patience of just take it step by step. Just, you've got a job to do, don't make a mess of it now, don't break anything just now. But it was, and then we got down, we had to follow the trail back down, it turns out it didn't look anything like it had the morning before. I had no recollection of the morning before being on this same trail going in the opposite direction. I was like, this is a different way. And the girl's like, no, there's the ribbons over there. We're totally in the right. Like, I'm sure that we didn't come this way. You said, well, yes, we did. I remember that bench. I remember that intersection. And I'm like, oh, okay. I must have had my head stuck up my ass yesterday morning because I couldn't remember any of it. But once we got onto the bitumen road that was in the village, and we were walking past our accommodation and everything, and I couldn't stop crying at that point. Like, it wasn't until that point of like 101k into it that I actually let myself believe that I was going to finish. There was just so many, the risk of injuring myself, the risk of having to pull out because of, your stomach going south, or, just physically not being able to continue, or the risk of the DNF for those last few hours. It was just, I cried. I just sobbed all the way down to the finish line. And then we ran across the little quadrangle thing and the plaza, and we ran across the finish line, and it was just, and Sarah was there waiting for us, and the race directors were there waiting for us, and it was just, I don't think I've cried so much for finishing a run ever. And I bawled after my first 50k last year at Kosciuszko. I was just, it's just, God, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. It was, it was hugs all round. It was just one of those moments that we were just overjoyed to finish and so relieved to finish. And I'll tell you what, hugs from strangers have never felt so comforting. These race directors have come out, and these two guys have come out and they've offered these hugs, and it was just the relief. I've never really thought I'd be the kind of person to throw around hugs at strange men, but it was mostly, it was almost a matter of, I don't want to, you don't care. You just don't care. At this point.
How much time did you have up your sleeve when you finished?
25 minutes. So we were, probably a kilometre and a half in 25 minutes at that, up there at that time of night that we had. That was about, we were the last ones for that night to come across the finish line. So, I think it was 11:35 that night, and we had till midnight.
Yeah,
it was pretty close. I guess when you come down to, it's when you think about how fast you can move after that distance and after that elevation, and I've still got bruising on my back from my pack. Of the amount of discomfort that between the four of us that we were in. If somebody had said you have to run or you're going to DNF, we probably would have found it somewhere in there to do our best. But yeah,
there becomes a time when walking is maximum effort.
It was pretty much maximum effort. It was, yeah. And that, the 50 metres or 60 metres that we ran to run across to get across the finish line at a run, it felt refreshing at first, just to move your legs in a different way, you know. But it wouldn't have lasted much longer. We probably would. I would have had maybe another 50 metres in those legs before they went, nah, this sucks just as much as rugby does. So, and it was just, but they were amazing. They had a fabulous medical crew on standby at the finish line. They inspected everybody's feet. They had blankets for people. They had hot drinks if we wanted them. They had massage if you had a massage, and they were super curious about toenails and all this sort of stuff. And it was just it was just really well supported from that point of view. But it was, and I think, but actually, I felt really traumatized by it for the first couple of days afterwards. And I think it would have been lovely to have a bit of time to, we had to leave the next morning, on the Sunday morning. So we were having third breakfast by 11:30 down in Mansfield the next morning. We'd had breakfast in our room at the hostel accommodation, and then we found some jaffles down at the finish line and coffees, and then about an hour and a half later we needed another breakfast. And so I had a 7-hour drive ahead of me, and Ness had a 9-hour drive ahead of her. So we'd shared that to Albury, and we had a bit of an opportunity to talk, I think, and talk our way, debrief a little bit about it. But it was, it was almost quite a traumatic experience,
Did you have any times in there where you were both at low points at the same time, or did you mostly sort of rotate?
I think the bits that we found challenging, that we both found challenging as far as the rock climbing, that first bit of the second bit of rock climbing that we had to do when we were at the top of the bluff, and we just climbed that big hill, and we were both pretty drained physically and mentally at that point, and then to face this thing which neither of us had signed up for it. Like, that wasn't, we both read the course description, and there was nothing in the course description about clambering over these rocks. And we were both at a pretty low point then, I think. Neither of us were really impressed with what we had to do. But I think Ness managed to pull herself out of it faster than I did, that's for sure. I think I would have sat there and had a bit of a tantrum if not for Ness at that point. And I think she had decided, and I did that little live video when we got to our campsite, and I said how she had, sometimes you have to be strong for somebody else before you can be strong, so that you can be strong for yourself. And that was her in that moment. She stepped up and she took control, and she talked, as much as she talked me through it, she talked herself through it well, because she was pretty close to having a tantrum over it as well. And I think perhaps if Ness had the emotional kind of response to it that I had when I was looking at, I just kept thinking to myself, I find this difficult. Imagine, and because it was all because of this autism thing, like it was, this whole, we want you to experience what it's like to have, to be overwhelmed or to be anxious and stressed and, to find things difficult and confronting. Like that is the glimpse into the world of a person living with autism that we can offer you. And we want you to feel this way. And I just kept thinking about my boys, and I couldn't see past that. And I think if Ness had that kind of emotional connection to it that I had, that we probably would have both been in the same boat.
Yeah.
And so it was just lucky for me that she doesn't, and she was able to sort of just keep processing and keep problem solving and, keep on with, whereas I was just stuck in this spot of, this overwhelming sense of empathy for my boys and what they go through every day. And it was, and I think as well on the crosscut saw, we were both pretty sick of it at that point. We were both pretty frustrated, I think, more than anything at that point. So I don't know that we were feeling low, but it was just so incredibly frustrating and never ending that it was just, that got us down, I think. It certainly tested our mental strength and, our reserves and our resolve to finish it, but also very loud and clear in your mind is the fact that you have no choice unless you're injured. The only way off that is to keep moving forward or turn around and go back that way 20k. Which is
so much worse.
Just as soul destroying as having to, it's only the way forward was only slightly more tempting than the way backwards. So I think we sort of managed to balance it out between the two of us pretty well. So, yeah. But I don't think either of us ever got really super duper down about things. It was, there was a few times there where the negative chatter would start and Ness would be like, not out loud chatter, but she would be, she'd sort of recognise it within herself and she'd say, hang on, I've just got to eat something. I'm getting a bit down and dark on the world. The negative voices are starting. I've just got to eat something. And I think for the most part we did a pretty good job of keeping an eye on each other for that kind of thing.
It's just such a long time domain for that kind of stuff to happen, because it's just a lot easier when it's a much shorter time domain. It's easier to stay focused and you go, well, I've only got this much further to go and then I'm done. So, but, maintaining your focus over 2 days is very different.
Yeah, it was certainly challenging from that point of view. And because you get and it's really easy to get an inward focus because it's, and especially when it's hard and it's technical and you're trying to concentrate and you can't talk and chat and distract each other because you actually both need to concentrate really, really hard. So to remember to check in with each other constantly, to the point of it even feeling like you're being a really annoying person, but but it's your job to check in with the teammate, because you are only as strong as the other person in that kind of scenario. So it was, and I guess it gave you the opportunity to focus on something other than yourself as well. I don't know how, it blows my mind I can't even fathom doing that event by myself. Like it's so good that it is a team event, because I think they would have a high DNF rate if it was a solo event for people to just complete by themselves in their own time, sort of, same time frames, whatever, people hiking and whatnot. But I think the team side of it makes it much more doable for people. I don't know how I don't know if I would have been able to do it if I'd been by myself, to be honest. So would I have been able to continue to push myself the whole time? I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing UTA 100.
I was going to say, what about that experience inspired you to sign up for UTA?
Lots of things, actually. Mental evaluation, psychiatric evaluation coming soon. No, because it is so different in that it's a 2-day event and there's this forced layover. So I want to know what it feels like to do a continued effort, to go from start to finish, stopping at aid stations for food and water and whatever, but to none of this have to stop here for 12 hours and sleep, as much as you can or whatever, and then to get up and do it the next day. So I wanted to know what it's like to do that. I need to know that they're not all the same as Oscars. I need to know. I need to know that they're not all that bad. Like that they're not that bad. That they're not all that hard, and that what it feels like to do it without the emotional attachment to the cause behind it.
Yeah.
And I need to know that I can do it by myself. So doing it with Ness, it was amazing, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But it was I guess in a way that was a safety net for myself for the first one, and I recognised that in myself, that I didn't trust myself to finish doing it by myself. So doing it with a team member, with somebody who I know has done 100K before, gives me, I guess it felt that I could draw on her strength when I needed to. So now I need to know whether or not I can do it on my own. And not that you ever do these things completely on your own, because there's always people you come across. There's always, you might have a support crew, or you might team up with somebody and, in the last half of an event, or you come across somebody who's struggling and you end up moving together, or you're struggling and you latch onto somebody else. I guess it's never a case of do it alone. But to do it as a solo participant, I guess the best way to describe it, I need to know that I can motivate myself and dig myself out of holes when I have to, and that I can push myself to those places of discomfort and push through that and separate myself from that and keep going, I guess. It seems like it seems like an extreme way of learning things about yourself. But some of us need extreme ways.
I think also because
I'm race a 5K. So
when I thought about you guys doing it as a team, I thought, that is going to be a great experience. But I also thought like if I was doing something like that personally, knowing the personality that I have, I would probably also be expending more energy on kind of like maintaining myself for
Yes.
the other person as well. And so you're drawing strength from that, but it is also, there is an element of there's more work because you are a team, and so you're having to put work into that team as opposed to solo things where you can just 100% focus on yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can be, and there was feelings like every now and again I'd be like, oh, geez, it's quiet. Maybe I think, what can we talk about, sort of thing. And then, but also, Ness and I were joking that on the Thursday afternoon we met up at Albury and drove down from Albury down to Mount Buller together. And we chat, a million miles an hour. Got so many things to talk about, and we were like, we really should have saved some of this for tomorrow. Because we're going to be on the top of some mountain somewhere and we're going to be like, we need to talk about something. And it was, but I think, and look, it's even more interesting, I guess, given that Ness and I live nowhere near each other. She's 4-hour drive away. We didn't train together. We, we have similar training methods, I think, because Ness worked with the same coach that I'm with for about 12 months, so she knows, she's maintained that style of training. So it's not like one of us is doing one thing and the other one is doing something else, but it's like in high school or university or something when you do group work, and group work is like the bane of university assessment, isn't it? Seriously, because it doesn't matter how much effort you put in yourself, you are only as good as the team. And I guess putting trust in, like I know Ness is a strong runner. She's a strong ultra runner. She's got heart she's got determination. She's got an incredible, she doesn't give up easily. She's, and I know she's committed, but but I guess from my point of view, I was determined not to be the weakest link in the chain, and that kept me and my training on track and on, focused. Not that I really need motivation to get out and do my runs or anything like that. It's, I don't ever struggle with that kind of thing, It's like, it's almost the opposite. But asking myself during my runs, am I putting in the effort that I'm needing to put in? Am I doing everything that I can while I'm out on this run to make sure that I get prepared the best, that I prepare myself the best for what's coming? And I think, there was times where you sort of think, God, it's really quiet around here. Maybe we should talk about something and all this sort of thing. But then I'd sort of check in. I'd say, are you okay? Do you want to chat? Do you want to, should we tell bad jokes, or is this silence comfortable? Or, do you want to talk about something? Because we can make shit up to talk about. That's fine. But, and I think we're sort of probably both honest enough with each other that we could say, no, I'm happy, shut up. Just don't, it was, and we don't know each other really super duper. It's not like we're best friends and we've been running together for ages or anything. God, we only met each other for the first time in real life 2 years ago at UTA for the first time. But I guess having crewed for Ness once for her first 100, and spending last year spending the weekend with her for the Australian Alpine Ascent that we did together. We've seen each other pre-race. We've seen each other post-race. I've seen her when she's 80 k's into 100 k's and she's hurting real bad, or she's heard my bad jokes, and it's I don't know. And I think because of what we have in our run club community there, we've got we don't have to worry about the small talk about getting to know people. So we love running. We both love running. We both love talking about running. Let's go running too. We've sort of, I don't know, it cuts away a lot of that peripheral sort of stuff that, we don't, we've become better friends in 2 years than maybe people become in 5 or 6 or 7 years. So it's, and we've said to each other at the end of it, I said we could do anything to each other now. We're stuck together. We've got Oscars, and we've been through that together. It's almost like a PTSD, and I don't intend to make light of mental illness or, post-traumatic stress or anything, but we went through that together and we helped each other through that. And nobody else knows except us and the other people who've done that event just what we battled through in ourselves to get that shit done, because it was quite literally the hardest thing I've ever done. I would have another baby over, like that. At the first 2 weeks out, I was like, I would rather go through labour again than do that.
Yeah, I've never done anything where I've said to myself.
But yeah, how many times have you things where you would choose labour over the event that you would do? It was those, like, we were both ready to burn all our gear, and it's and I just think, God, that was hard enough in perfect weather conditions. We literally had perfect weather conditions. I dread to think what it would have been like. It fills me with fear and dread to think doing that in the rain or the snow or I don't know what. Like, it would be.
Those rocks would be super slippery. It's just
I reckon that would just be. I don't know that. Yeah, it would just. Yeah, I'd be getting I'd have to take a plastic thing to slide down to get down Muesli Spur or something. I don't know. It would just wear spikes in my shoes or something. And that's the thing that stops me from hurrying to go back next year is Russian roulette with the weather. You never know. It's it's the mountains. It could do anything, and it was difficult enough to do it in perfect conditions versus doing it in inclement weather. And I think, and that comes with experience, having the confidence to be able to do that sort of stuff when it is shitty weather. But it's, it was, I keep having to remind myself, and part of recovery, part of my recovery is that as well, is to remind myself that this was my first 100K event. It's going to take me longer to recover from this event than it's going to take other people who have done longer ultras before. It always takes you longer. That first 10K race that you did, it's going to take you longer to recover from that than any other subsequent 10K races. Even
the training is different. Like I found that, like with the first marathon, like appetite was insane and I was just tired all the time, and I basically towards the end turned it into like a sleeping eating machine who occasionally went for runs. And then so when I did train for the next one, I was all sort of like mentally prepared for it. I'm like, right, this is going to be really exhausting, and like I'm going to need to sort of like meal prep all the time just to sort of like keep up with the food. And then I got into it and I'm like, now I'm fine. Because, like,
okay now.
You just, it's just such a shock to the system the first time, and, and the recovery also afterwards. It just, it's sort of like even when I first started doing like long runs for half training, like I'd run 20 Ks and then like I'd come home and sleep. Yeah. And now like I run 20 Ks like 3 times a week before breakfast, and then like go and then like I go to the gym. Like it's just completely different. And I think that it's easy to sort of not exactly forget, but lose touch with like that progress because it is so incremental.
Yeah.
Over time.
Yeah. It's like when you see kids and you go, oh, you've grown. It's like, really? That kid hasn't grown for at least, but because you only see, when you're only evaluating it every now and again through either a training cycle or a race, and it's not till you do that next 20K training run and your body bounces back easier, or, you even adding extra days to your running, whereas, you first start and you're running 3 days a week and you're leaving days, rest days in between each run. And, I remember being frightened to put 2 days together 4 years ago when I first started running. So, putting 2 runs on consecutive days, it was like, oh my God, like how's my body going to cope with that? And now, sometimes when I'm not looking, it's like, oh, I just ran 8 days in a row. Oh, I need a rest day. No wonder that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, because it was such a struggle to start running, that my favourite thing about going for a run in the beginning on the treadmill at the 24-hour gym was I am now at the point where I've got the longest amount of time before I've got to go for a run again. It was like a full sort of like Pollyanna situation. I had to sort of talk myself into, I'll go, but then it's like 2 days before I've got to go again. And so, yeah, like now it's like my rest days change a lot from week to week. So I don't know, like when I've got a rest day and it's just like, could be running, might not be running, it's just completely.
And double up days as well. Like I remember first introducing double up days into my routine than I expected. And I've probably, the whole wisdom tooth debacle not helped in the slightest. But I feel like now that's behind me to an extent. I'm off on my pain. It's what it's been, I don't know, a month, hasn't it? It's been a month since Oscars. And my Garmin has finally got on board and I'm being productive. Finally, 4 weeks. And I had a run this morning where I actually thought to myself, I'm going to do 2 strides. I'm going to see, I want to run fast. I want to see what it feels like to run fast. Because there's not much about training for ultras that involves running fast. It's certainly not as a baby ultra runner, as a beginner ultra runner. There's not much about it's been about building time on feet and building up some kilometres in my weekly volume and things like that. It's not been about go off and do some threshold sprint, some threshold intervals or go and do some sprints or anything. So I did some strides this morning and I was like, my legs took a few goes to sort of feel like, hey, hang on, did we used to do this every now and again, because it's been well over, I reckon it'd be 18 months since maybe 15 months since I've done strides. And my legs were like, you sure about you're feeling okay? But the second lot of strides I did, my legs started to wake up and it started to feel like something I could do. And
your next thing, like obviously UTA is happening, but your next thing is Canberra?
Yes.
Short jog?
Just going to go for a little training run. We're going to do the half marathon, and you'll be doing your half marathon a lot faster than I'll be doing my half marathon in Canberra. But it's my birthday that day, and I thought, what better way than not running a marathon on my birthday? So I'm going to do a half marathon on my 42nd birthday and do 500 metres for every year of my life. So I didn't. Quite honestly, the thought of running the marathon in Canberra doesn't really thrill me. It's a really fast field.
Yeah.
And I've heard previous people's experiences that as a 5.5 hour marathoner that they will be packing up by the time you finish, which is really demotivating for me. So
yeah, and it is I have a problem with this is sort of happened to people, I think, in Wangaratta and on the Gold Coast, I believe, in the past.
Yeah.
I think that if you've got, this is the cut-off time, then packing up before the cut-off time is inappropriate.
I agree.
If you want a shorter cut-off time, make a shorter cut-off time, because you're taking money from people and then not holding up your end of the deal.
Absolutely. Yeah. As a service provision, you're letting down your end of the bargain, aren't you? And it's it's incredibly demotivating to be to think that actually you fall within the cut-off times, but you've got the sweet bus behind you. Even though you've got a half hour, or you're an hour before cut-off or whatever. It doesn't encourage me to participate, and it sure as hell wouldn't encourage a lot of other people to participate. So, I would have thought that we've moved past the marathons are for elite runners, and if anything over a 4 hour or 4.5 hour marathon is a slow effort. I think running now is more about inclusion and participation, and lots more people these days are running marathons.
Yeah.
Most of us, are doing it a lot slower than others, and and unfortunately, it's I guess there's few marathon courses out there that really do showcase the city as well as it could. But I find, given how familiar I am with Canberra, that there's an awful lot of time spent on roads that there's nothing to look at. Yeah. And I think it can be, if you're at the back of the pack, even though you're well within cut-off times, if you're at the back of the pack and you're out there by yourself, it can be really demotivating and really be a struggle mentally to get the job done. So
and it's a long recovery time for something that's not like a specific goal. It's one thing if you've said this is going to be one of my marathons for the year, and you've got you've sort of trained for that. But if it's just forming part of something you're doing for fun, or just part of your training for other things, it's a big road bump.
Absolutely.
Because whereas with the half, even if something that's at a high effort for you, your recovery time's just a lot quicker.
Absolutely. And I know that a half marathon on that day means that that I can still the next day or 2 days later I'll be running again. It's okay, and it's my birthday. I don't want to.
I probably will not be running again 2 days later.
Yeah. And only a month later I've got UTA. So it's less than a month away now to the Australian Running Festival, and so we're 3 weeks away today.
I've just been looking at because my coach for personal training said, what do you want to do with strength training? If you've got this race coming up, what's ideal? What have you done in the past? I said, I actually can't remember. And I know from the research what is the recommendation, which is for a half would be sort of 10 days to 2 weeks before you stop strength training. Yeah. But I have experimented a lot with sort of different things, because obviously everyone's body responds differently, and I've certainly kept going for too long, but I've also certainly stopped too early.
Yeah, I've stopped too early as well.
And then ended up lethargic, and I'm there's got to be a sweet spot. So I went in and looked at not my fastest one, but also the ones that felt the best. There were certainly ones that were quick, but I didn't feel great for the run. And I went and I looked, and it was me stopping strength training 10 days before.
Yeah.
But going to CrossFit on the Monday.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be doing anything crazy like hang snatches or anything that's going to be loading up my hamstrings because
Yeah.
I might need them later.
You might need them, and
But a little bit of intensity on that Monday seems to make me feel better for the Sunday rather than having like this long stretch of not doing what my body's used to doing. And also it probably, when I don't do that, it can like open the window for my excellent track record of getting sick.
Yes. Yes. You just need to keep that little secret to yourself that you're going to do a race, that you're going to race that, and just
although
don't put your body in on the secret.
I haven't and it would probably be more amusing to me than anything else if I did get sick before Canberra, because I haven't actually had a cold in like 9 months.
Yeah.
I'm on a streak. Unfortunately, like I've been taking like a greens and vitamin supplement as part of my anti-cold defense system, and they've had a break in their supply chain with a whole bunch of their packages going missing. And so like I'm out and it hasn't quite arrived yet, and they sent me an email saying, "We're sending an express, we're really sorry." And I'm like, "Get it here."
It's on a knife edge here, don't you understand?
Gotta keep everything exactly the same or it's gonna go pear-shaped.
Yeah. And everything depends on me getting that. You do build in habits, don't you? And you get a little bit superstitious sometimes about the things that this is working, so it must be 1 + 1 = 2 kind of thing. So it's a combination of the supplement and my sleep and my this and my that, and I've been really, really well. Don't change anything. Don't mess with it.
And it is I can also feel that there have been times where like I've been close to getting a cold and I've just kind of fought it off, and it's just that kind of like drop in training volume that's just the kind of thing that could set off that chain reaction. But the good thing about this time of year is that there are loads of races on offer. So say, for example, if something like that happened, I know that, like a couple of weeks later, there's a Gold Coast half and, whatever else. So
it's half as well, isn't there? That's
like it's not like it can be a bit more stressful at the end of the year where you're like, this is the last thing before it gets too hot. If I don't race
Melbourne, I'm done till April kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, you can obviously do something at any time, but it's
more fun when you get
more fun doing it elsewhere, like with people handing you water.
I think so too. And
it's
you
just
get that adrenaline from a crowd that you don't.
You never run as well as you do like when there are people around you and you see other people who are also in the pain cave, and you just we're all in this together.
Absolutely.
And you just can feed off the atmosphere so much more. So
I agree. And the anticipation, the build up, the getting the pre-race nerves and jitters, and you can channel that sort of stuff into a really positive place and have that fuel you for the first sort of 5 or 10K, which is in a half marathon. You're halfway done by the time that wears off. You've only got to get yourself through another 10K and you're home and hosed. So, but no, it's going to be awesome to see you in person, and we'll be able to have a catch up, and hopefully we'll catch up with some people, some other op movers in camp as well. So, and it's always lovely to have be able to sit around and drink coffee and have a laugh and spend time with people in real life. These people who live in my phone, my Facebook group things.
And my mum will be there, which I don't think she's ever come to a race before. But her boyfriend lives in Canberra, so I'm going to stay with them.
Yep.
So that'll be nice. Get some nice home cooked meal before I.
That'll be. And a few donuts. I have to get some donuts. I think I owe you some donuts. I'm sure we owe we need some. I think that was why we were going to do it. You're coming down for it, so we could have a bit of a we have a little coaches little powwow and do an event together. Well, not together, but the same event at the same weekend. So
because it's not.
Wangaratta last year, and you were injured, so it was the last time we caught up.
Yeah,
I think
exactly. Because
I know UTA,
where I was.
You're
still not running, but also like seeing people after they came back from 50Ks. I wasn't overly disappointed about not running.
You were running a little bit, weren't you? But you were
I was sort of rehab running, so I wasn't doing much more than I was doing sort of sprints, but not sort of like lots of continuous running. It was deeply confusing for the ultra running community in Katoomba when I went out to do my sprints. It's like, what is she doing?
I would have been talking about you at the coffee van. Did you see that? She was running really fast, but not for very long, and she just
stopped and walked.
What are those
shoes? It was flat.
What are those shoes? They look like trail shoes. She wears a hydration pack. Yes, you would have been. You would have felt very out of place in Katoomba UTA last year with your runningness and sprints and intervals and things like that. It's but it's nice to be able to do that, because I think year before last we were in Melbourne. And I did a marathon and you did the half, and we, it's just so lovely to have those opportunities to come together as a community that is primarily based online. And there's little enclaves of us, the little enclaves of us in different cities and towns and things. But it's just, it's I guess it brings home to me one of the motivations that I have for doing events, which is the social side of it. One of the things that means, that fills my cup is, and you're the same, I'm sure, that's an event where your community comes together in person and gets just as much joy out of each other's company as we do, in real life as we do online. And it just goes to show the integrity and the authenticity of the people in the group. It's really lovely to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's so nice to be back, like, in season, as it were, because it's like the off season's so long, like you got to go from like October to April, not see any of your people, and there's, it's so hot.
It's so hot, and all you want to do is complain about how hot it is, and and come winter, the running's easier, you've got more, your appetite comes back, and you feel like eating, and it's just you don't feel like you need to live in an ice bath all the time. You're going to be surprised, I think, with the temperature difference between the north of New South Wales and Canberra. So
I have concerns, because I remember doing the half at Gore one year, and I could not feel my feet for the first 5 kilometres, and it's not good. That's a worry. So you need me to sort of like run something hard in 30-degree heat. I'm good, but like as much as I would like it to be colder, it's going to be a shock to the system.
Absolutely. You're going to need one of those doonas at the start line. Like if your mum's coming along, is she coming to the start line? She'll be able to hold you.
She probably will. She probably will.
So you check your gear into the gear check. You've got to check it in sort of 20 minutes, half an hour before the start of the race. So if you've got mum there, she can be cheap jacket holder, and she can.
On the upside, I can make use of all of my winter running stuff, which probably doesn't get as much use as it possibly should. So,
and it's 50 use over about 10 years.
Get some of those base layers happening.
Yeah. But it does. Hopefully it's a nice weekend for it, because last year the weather was pretty terrible. It was windy and cold, and the year before it was torrential rain for them. It wasn't so bad for the half marathon, but the full marathoners got just a deluge of water. It was crazy. And it was freezing. The year before, it was beautiful. It was just a gorgeous Canberra autumn morning, and it was, I think it was probably about 6 or 7 degrees to start with. And by the end of, by lunchtime, it was 20-something degrees, and it was just perfect for running. It was just beautiful. So hopefully, fingers crossed.
I haven't started the weather stalking stage of the insanity yet.
Well, considering what we're 3 weeks away and it's 24 degrees today, and it was 15 degrees this morning at 5:30, autumn's drunk, gone home, so don't bother.
No.
I wouldn't make any guarantees about. I wouldn't presume to know what the weather's going to do in 3 weeks' time. Who knows? But we'll be. It'd be nice if it didn't rain or if it wasn't super windy, because it is quite an open.
The wind can, certainly make things a bit more spicy. But having sort of done that run with the after, what was that, like Omar or whatever it was. Anyway, there was like 50-kilometre winds on one of my runs, and it's like, well, it's probably not going to be that bad. That kind of stuff. But
hopefully, yeah. If it was spring, it would be a different matter. But autumn's actually a pretty good time in Canberra to have these kind of events. Although it's my birthday and it'll probably rain, so I'm sorry. Apologies now. Always does. But it's I think it's going to be the first time I've sort of done an event on my birthday, so it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, and what the family think of it too. I think there's sort of the kids will be a bit like, oh well, hang on, Mum, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the new habits of going out and doing things like that they're just not used to. So it's I try and avoid doing events on their birthdays, but there's no rules about what I do on my birthday now. So
and that's one of the reasons I haven't been down to Canberra before, because the girls' birthdays are in that week, so they're on the 8th and the 10th, but on my birthday or around my birthday, there's usually the Lismore run, so they're sort of used to me going down and doing that, and I'm like, I'll see you at midday.
See you at lunchtime.
See you at lunchtime, or I may be in need of a nap, but it's all good.
It's okay, it's your birthday, you can nap. It's not much different to working on your birthday, I guess. I've had to work many a day on my birthday, so that's not a problem. But this will be infinitely more fun than going to work. Infinitely. And a whole lot more food involved, hopefully.
Yes. A lot more food, a lot more coffee.
All the coffee. Nah, it's going to be awesome. But it's sort of it's funny, and I did this last year as well. I had my first half of my year all planned out, and I had my events and and then after UTA I just sort of stopped. Like not the running stopped, but the inspiration for the next events are sort of slow in coming, and I think it sort of showed the level of fatigue that had built up over doing 2 50Ks in, my first 2 50Ks in a 3-month period, and that maintaining that training and the focus, the energy that you put into planning and everything. It was it's sort of the same this year. Next year I'm going to have to break the cycle. I'm going to change things up, because I feel like I'm repeating my behaviours a little bit. That that doing 100K in February and then following it up with 100K in May. And then I've sort of, I haven't really got any firm plans yet for the second half of the year. So it's a little bit, I think part of it is I need to allow for the rest that's going to need to happen. I'm going to need a good sort of 4 to 6 week recovery after UTA, I think.
Yeah.
Given that my recovery post-Oscars is not going to be complete.
Yeah.
I've got another week of easy running and then I'm back into training. So, and then I've sort of got 6 weeks of training before I taper for UTA. So it's going to be there's going to be an increase in volume over the next sort of 6 or 7 weeks. It's not going to be a full blown, obviously not a dedicated training block, but I'll be building on what fitness gains I've made over this training for Oscars and doing Oscars. So hopefully the body's going to be willing. Mine is. But yeah, I just want to, I don't know, and I've got things that I want to do that I'm thinking that I want to do in the second half of the year, but I just I don't want to pin anything down until I see what UTA has to offer and what that delivers for me.
I mean, and sometimes I think that you need that. Like I think it was, I forget what year it was, but was gonna say, I think it was 2014 when I ran the Gold Coast, and it was just, I attempted to do something that I really think was overreaching my level of fitness, but I still did it, which is just a testament to like what you can do when you sort of set your mind to something. But it was so brutally hard that it was almost like mentally I didn't want to go there, and physically my body didn't want a red line like that. And so I was really sort of like quite gun shy of like a fast half after that. And I went like, that was sort of in lead up to a marathon. And then I went into, so maybe it was later, maybe it was 2015. But anyway, I went into probably about 18 months after that where I just didn't have it in me to race anything. It was just like mentally just did not have the capacity for it, and my body just didn't want to go into that kind of place, and I almost needed all of that time to then feel like fresh enough and ready and excited about doing something. And then when I did Melbourne at the end of 2017, I guess it was, that was a completely different race. Like that, it felt hard in the last 3Ks.
Yeah.
And, like there are obviously aspects of it that are hard about running that fast, but I basically felt good the whole way. And I just sort of like got to the last 3Ks and going like, okay, I cannot speed up from here, but I can maintain this pace.
Yeah.
Completely different experience.
Yeah.
So I finished that more excited about training and, like whatever the next thing would be. And I think sometimes you need not to replace sort of an experience with a positive one, but to have a different one to kind of go, okay, like not everything has to be like that really, really awfully hard thing that I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. And just it shows you that it's not going to be the same every time. It's not, and because, the half is such a great distance as far as, how many a year you want to run, or, it can be something, it's not, if you're racing them and you're making them A races, then you want to periodise your training and all that sort of stuff. But you could run a half marathon every other week, every 2 a month kind of thing, and just that could be part of your normal training cycle. That's, it's not something that unless you've raced it and you want to, and then you're having a dedicated recovery period, you could run a half marathon every other weekend. I mean, you do your long runs on the weekend, you'd be running half marathon distance most weekends, if not more.
Yeah, I usually I would probably do half marathon distance or around that. I would say like probably 3 times a week, depending on the week. Sometimes it'd be a couple of times a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And and that's sort of like the benefit of that specific distance is it's not like is that you're not sort of like having any sort of like risk of injury because everything's under 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of that is so, and the way they're structured is like, okay, like there's 5K of warm up, there's 3K of cool down, and so oftentimes the actual like quality part of the session is like 10Ks, sometimes it's longer, and so like probably I need more recovery like when I do like the progression runs, because that's like 25Ks of work, as opposed to sort of like the more interval stuff where there's work, but
there's work rest periods.
Yeah, I love it. I love a good rest period. I see my session and it's got rest in it, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah,
that is good news.
The old standing rest, it's kind of nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember one of my favourite runs that I ever did was a interval thing, and I think it was 2 5K. Like I had a warm up and then 2 5K rest, 2 5K intervals, and I had like a 5-minute standing rest in the middle of them, and it was like starting a whole new run after you've had a rest for 5 minutes. It was really, I think my second 5K was faster than that first 5K, or, you know, on par. It wasn't slower like I had expected it to be. And it was just, I remember thinking to myself, this is the bee's knees. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And yet my run this morning of not quite 5K, you'd be thinking, God, I can't even imagine being able to run like that anymore. But that's me at the, you know, where I'm at in my recovery at the moment and in my, you know, training cycle. And it's so, oh God, it's trying.
It's weird though, because like I'll do like one of my quality sessions and I'll probably average, you know, like around like 5-minute pace, and, you know, and that will feel like hard work, but it will feel good, you know. I won't necessarily feel like I'm fighting for that pace. It'll just, you know, be what it is. And then I will tend to have like a recovery run, not the run the day after, but like the recovery run sort of 2 days after that, where like I couldn't really like get above a 7-minute pace if I tried. And it can kind of like, it's weird how it happens, because it can kind of like, if you let it, it can kind of psych you out a bit, you know. You're like, because then the way my cycle goes, the next day I've got like a quality session and I'm like, this does not feel good. Like, how am I going to get it together for that? But then I always feel good the next day, and that part of it is just your body, like your body knows. It's like, this is our pace today.
Yeah, and not pushing it when you don't have and I guess it highlights the importance of doing when you've got an easy run. Make sure it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, was this
every run. That's your opportunity for your body to rest and recover.
I was listening to a podcast where they were sort of talking to a running coach, and they were asking her, like, what should your pace be, you know, for easy runs? And she gave like a thing about like this much slower than your marathon pace. And most of the stuff that she was talking about, I would 100% agree with that. And then she got to that and I was like, I don't agree with that, because like I was thinking, but I had to convert the miles because she's talking in mile pace. And I'm like, what does that equal? And like based on her recommendation is that the slowest I would run my easy runs would be like 6-minute pace. And I'm like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. Like I could run that, but it would be like most of my easy stuff would, you know, like as the quality stuff has gotten more intense, my easy stuff has slowed down. So if I'm just doing easy runs, they probably would be quicker than that. But because I have that level of fatigue from those big sessions, they're much more likely to be like 6:30, 6:50 pace. You know, like sometimes I'll have those 7-minute pace runs, and you know, like, and I think it also depends on like how you train. Like, I tend to do better with like a run slower during training, and then there's more for races, whereas some people would probably feel lethargic from running their easy runs that slow. So I do think it's so good to sort of just learn like how it should feel, you know, like not like I know how an easy run should feel for me. And, you know, like I know it should feel like I'm not aware that I'm running. That's that's the feeling I go for.
And you should be rested and recover. You know, you shouldn't be feeling tired after your easy run. It's, you know, but and you get caught up in pace and you think, well, 6 minutes 30 is my easy pace, so I should be running at 6 minutes 30. And even if 6 minute 30 feels hard, I'll run at 6:30 because that's easy pace. And you can't, you know, that algorithm that's landed you at that pace for your easy runs doesn't accommodate for a lack of, you know, decent sleep, and it doesn't accommodate for, you know, kids with kid dramas or, you know, all the external stresses in your life. It doesn't, you know, that all counts to how your run's going to feel. It doesn't account for that sort of stuff. So you have to step away from that, I think, sometimes, and just run to feel. And getting to know how your body feels at certain speeds is a really important lesson, I think, you know.
Yeah, and I use it in the quality sessions too. Like I know, like if I do my easy warm-up and it's sort of like sitting more at like 6 minute pace, I'm like, well, today is a really good day to push the pace because I'm feeling good, body's feeling good. And on other days, if it's more like my easy run warm-up portion is like 6:45, I'm like, okay, like I probably don't have a lot in the tank today, so I'm just going to go for something conservative and, you know, and hope for the best. And it does sort of like help to sort of like frame, you know, like what is easy for today. And so yeah, like it's probably less of a thing in trail running, but I think it's really easy to get into, like locked into sort of like sense of paces when you're road running and everything is like too measurable.
I think so, and I think that was one of the things. And I still do a lot of my running on road. Like I don't have easy front of door access to trails, and with 4 kids sometimes it might be weeks in between getting on some dirt for a run. So and you know, in base training cycles of my training I do some faster running and threshold stuff and progression runs and things like that, and on the road it's easier to do those sorts of runs on the road because everything is so measurable. But if you were doing them on the trail, it would be you'd just be relying on feel and you know, your overall pace per kilometre, taking into account the amount of elevation gain and things like that. And I think you know, for what it's worth, from my opinion anyway, and from my experience, that those are the sort of the runs that I would choose to do those on road, even if I had a choice between trail and road. I think that they're there for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
Runs, they serve a purpose for your training, and to do them to meet the paces that you're supposed to be hitting. That, you know, that if road is where that happens, then do it on the road. You know, you can build your technical skills on the trail other times. You know, those sessions are there to build speed and endurance, and you know, at certain speeds, and you know, they will benefit your trail running from a cardiovascular point of view and all that sort of stuff. But it's you know, they have a significance and purpose. So, you know, to do them the best way that you can is to do them on the road. So, but I actually really enjoy. I think because I don't do them very often, I really enjoy my. Also, I always get really excited when I see a progression run on my plan. Not quite so excited by threshold runs; they tend to hurt a little bit too much for my liking. But it's but at the same time, it's nice to see. It's a nice. I use them as a benchmark.
Yeah.
Scenario, and you think, well, this was my threshold pace 12 months ago. This is it now, and you know, one's slower than the other, but that just gives me an indication of where I'm at, and you know, forces me to sort of look at where my focus is at the moment. So, it's very interesting. All the nuances. Just you talk about it all day. And love every minute of it. It's because nobody else wants to talk about running all day like we do.
My
Not very many people in my real life
dentist
anyway.
apologised because he always asks me about running when I go in to see him, and he sort of last time I had asked a few questions, and then he kind of apologised. He said, "Oh, like, sorry to bombard you with questions," and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I love to talk about running. It's my favourite part of the day."
It's wonderful. You can talk about my friend here who owns a coffee shop in town, and she's a runner, and we talk about running every time I see her, and she's like, "Oh, I hope you don't mind talking about running. I always ask you about running, and just but nobody else wants to talk about running, so I just need to talk about it." I'm always happy to drink your coffee and to talk about running.
Yes.
Happy to oblige. Happy to help wherever I can. It's so nice. I had to put up a meme on look also to see about how my running's going when you're at a real person party. And it's almost like people ask you at their own, at your own risk, at your own peril. Once I start, that's it.
Yeah, every now and then I have to force myself to stop. I'm going, "You're being very boring right now. This is not a runner. This is a normal person, and you've spoken for too long."
Surely there's a way that you can bring everything back to running, surely.
Has to be.
Has to be, surely. I mean, and they say that, the first rule of CrossFit is to tell everybody about CrossFit. I think the first rule of running is to tell everybody about
running. People have that joke about veganism and CrossFitters too. Like, if you are a vegan CrossFitter, like, what do you tell people first?
Like, how do you decide what to talk about?
How do you know?
But yes, anywho. Sorry, everybody. Oh, dear.
Well, we should get fed or... Are you going swimming? What time is it?
No, I've run out of time for swimming. I've got time for a burrito now, and it's pretty high up there.
That's pretty good.
I'm going to take one for the team, and I'm going to go and eat rather than swim. So it'll be got to prioritise these things sometimes. And swimming's one of those things. Like, I know. I'm sure you put up a post the other day about the same. It's one of those things, there's so many steps involved, it takes so much more time. It's like the motivation required for me to get, and I love swimming, not as much as running. I love swimming, but getting into the pool from my car is literally the hardest thing in the world some days, because it's not running. And there's I think when you're just so used to being, okay, like, I'm going running, like, I put on my running clothes, I get my phone, get my key, walk out the door, go running, and then swimming, it's just like, oh God. I got to find the swimmers, I got to find a towel, where are my goggles, then I've got to go and interact with a person at the swimming pool, and then I've got to, like, go through, like, having that conversation with them where they say, "I saw you running the other day," and I'm like, "Yep, you did." Yeah, and then if there's people in the pool and they're swimming in lanes, and it's, if there's, we're in a small town, there's only a small pool, and if there's people in all the lanes, it's like, which lane do I get in? And I'll spend a few minutes thinking about assessing people's speed and relative to my own speed.
Yeah, like, where is the slowest possible lane that I can get into, because that is the one I need to be in so that I don't get continually lapped.
Exactly. So there's a whole lot more that goes into the thought process, and it was, if I can do it straight after drop off in the morning, or if I can meet a friend to do it, well, don't talk obviously because breathing underwater, not much chit chat, but But to make a day for somebody is, sometimes it's easy to go and do it, and other times it's incredibly difficult to make myself go. But you know what? It's an extra. It's an optional extra. It's a nice addition. The motivation is the fact that the pool will be closed to outdoor swimming in about a month's time. And I'll lose the opportunity to swim in the 50-metre pool. So, but you know what? That's okay. It's nice, but it's not essential. So, and I'm, for running, I've got 4 runs this week, and 2 gyms. So this is back to me. Next week is full programming. So if I cut myself some slack, I've been making peace with that over the past 4 weeks, cutting my slack and not expecting too much. So just because I feel like I'm up to it, it doesn't necessarily mean that I should be doing it.
Yeah, and it is one of that. Like I had a conversation with my coach because of the time difference. I often don't have the program on Monday, so I just text him and say, "What do you want me to run today?" And he'll tell me. And he said, either like a soft 10 or have a day off. And I knew after the preparation run that I would really be better off with the day off. And I was and I had like all of this set up to do with sort of like new Learn to Run people starting, and I was like, day off is good. But the sort of anxiety I had about not running the 10 and taking the lesser option was like a real thing. And I got to the afternoon and I'm like, you are a ridiculous human.
Yeah.
You know that you needed the day off.
Oh boy, how many Ks did you run last week? Like 110 or something?
Like this is ridiculous. You'll feel heaps better and this is fine. And sometimes you do just have to talk to yourself.
And sometimes it's a constant lesson in how to embrace the rest day, because the rest days are important. They're not punishment. They're not, they're a really important part of your training program. And it's, the weekend leading up to Learn to Run starting is hardly relaxing, And that first week is really full on. These women pay for, expect and deserve a lot of support, and part of you being able to do that as well as your own running is having the rest day and giving yourself the grace to take that. And I think, so many of us fight it, but then, eventually you realise that it's part of the magic, don't you? And it's part of the equation. You have to have it or there's just fatigue. You start earning fatigue in compound interest and you have to take a rest day sooner or later, I think. So, good on you. Good on you for doing it. And you're going to have a great week because of it, hopefully. So,
yeah. And the sort of saving grace is that when he did put the program up, he put it like as an off day, not as a 10K day. And I was like, oh, my God. So now I don't have to look at that as 10K that I didn't do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but
isn't it?
It's like those weird sort of runners quirks. Like one of my workouts this week was like 1.6 kilometre repeats. I think that's a weird number. How is that? That's like I've done, like 4 before. I've done 5. I've done 6. I've done 8. Never done 7.
Yeah.
7 seems weird. And it's like, but I got to the 7th and I was glad it was 7 and not 8.
But 8's that lovely number. The 7 has no symmetry. I'm sorry,
no.
But when the coach says, "Coach, it's what you got to do," 7 has been the perfect amount. I'm sure. One more and you would have been cooked.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to an interview with the guy, one of the guys who wrote Peak Performance, and he was talking about the magic sort of number with running and with a lot of other things is always stopping what's known as like 1 rep short. So always finishing feeling like you could do 1 more interval, but not 2 more. And sort of similar with lifting weights, like feeling like that was a really hard rep and I could do 1 more, but I couldn't do 2 more. And that's sort of like the magic of you sort of like pushing the boundaries, but not over fatiguing yourself and have it be sustainable.
Yep. Yeah, because that next interval that you go to attempt, or the next lift that you attempt, you might, you increase the risk of injuring yourself and fatiguing. And what's the point of doing that? Yeah, you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, do you? So it's nice to it does wonders for you to finish feeling strong rather than finish feeling like you didn't make that last interval or you didn't make that last lift. To feel energised instead of makes a big difference.
Exactly.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you go get food. Yeah.
I need to get something to eat. It's so lovely. It's awesome to thank you for listening to my my epic journey, Ness and my epic journey. I'm almost a little bit disappointed that she doesn't want to go back next year. No, I'm joking. I'm a little bit relieved, to be honest. But I'll be I'm sure when it comes next year I'll be feeling a little bit of FOMO for those people. They've sold out 50% of their team entries for next year already to pre-entries from this year's competitors for next year. So to have a 50% return rate for the competitors speaks volumes for the event, I think. But yeah, if anybody wants to know any more about the race or wants to know if they think that they should do it or think that they could do it, I'm more than happy to have chats with people if that's a question, because I think it's it's one of those things that it's not to be taken on lightly, that's for sure. Approach with caution. You'd be prepared to have the time of your life. Like, it was not, I wouldn't call it fun, but it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. But yeah, happy to talk some more about it. Anyway, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye. Thank you for listening today, and thanks to Kirsten for taking such a long amount of time to talk to me. And hopefully you made it to the end of the episode, even though I think it's like 2.5 hours. If you have any questions for her, let me know. We are accepting Learn to Run registrations for the 22nd of April, so you can jump on that if you're interested. And you can always join Kirsten in Run Club at any time, and I'll put up the links for that as well as a link to her Instagram in the notes, and I'll see you next time. Bye.